Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient slash survivor. Been dealing with cancer since late 2020, early 2021, doing very well and embracing the change in seasons here in Texas. And it's actually a beautiful day today. And I hope wherever you're at, watching this that is beautiful for you as well. Please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section, and you are in for a treat. Today we have just an absolutely incredible gentleman, and his name is Danny Gereg. And I just recently met him through a friend of mine, Boyd Dunleavy, and he is really an amazing person. And so, without further ado, what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring Danny on. Danny, please introduce yourself and share with us a little bit about your story. And we're going to get into a phenomenal conversation.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mark. I'm humbled, man. That was a great introduction. I'm glad that maybe my work is really getting a nice amount of energy going with it. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Um, I guess we start right at the beginning, and when I start into this rabbit hole, typically, but the more I get into this, the more it's about illness. You know what happened there? We probably broke up a little bit. Uh, so
No
you can
problem.
edit
Keep
that.
let's keep going.
I just dropped. But I when I speak of my journey, I speak of illness versus even just cancer, because the deeper I get into my advocacy work, I meet a ton of people, and all our stories end up being pretty much the same yet starkly different. But in 2023. I was diagnosed with non-muscle invasive bladder cancer. So my journey actually happens about a year before that, when the symptoms came. And it became a like onion layers when it came to getting healthy. I was an alcoholic. I was obese for most of my life. I had terrible coping skills mentally. My physical health was just poor. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy of really just death. I just kind of sat there, went through the motions, went to work every day, drink every night, get up, do it again, and not really pay any attention whatsoever to my health. So it was a
How much did you
surprise.
weigh, Danny?
I weighed 300 pounds when I was diagnosed. I had lost a little bit because my wife had actually asked me to stop drinking. And I loved her a little bit more than I did the alcohol. So I said, we're gonna go ahead and just do this. And I luckily didn't have too much of a problem with that. I lost a little sleep, but luckily I wasn't really deep into the physical addiction and alcohol. But what it did was it uncovered a myriad of other problems. I had started to kind of get sick in the morning and vomit every once in a while. Maybe it was the coffee, and sometimes it had happened. I think I was doing pretty good. I was going to the gym, everything was going pretty much okay. But then one day I woke up and I was vomiting uncontrollably every 15 minutes for about 12 hours. Now, that stands testament to the male's ability to ignore an issue that they're having. I'm going there all day, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll quit puking in the next hour. And finally, after I was just a hunk of meat laying on the floor, my wife drugged me into the hospital, and they they had stopped the vomiting, but they wanted to check me for any kind of a tear in my esophagus due to the amount of heaving that I'd done. So they gave me a CT scan, and that's when they found the smudge. So that's like step two, But the doctor, I'll never forget, he's like, well, we got this thing here. It could be an artifact, which I later looked up in my research to mean, like, let's say you left your car keys in your pocket. Just, it's nothing. It's a smudge. You moved. Or carcinoma. And here's one of those big swaths of information gaps, as I learned, So that started me off on the journey of cancer. That directed me towards urology and ending up where I'm sitting here today.
So that's how you got diagnosed with cancer. What were your thoughts when you were given your diagnosis?
Mm, absolutely lost in a void of information, I always say. The best way to bring a picture to mind would be when I got diagnosed, or when I pretty much knew that I had cancer. By the time it had gotten looked at by my urologist, and he said, we're not going to be 100% until we get that biopsy, but I'm pretty sure. I remember going to a store with my wife because, you got to pick up life and go shopping or do what you got to do. And I was walking through the store and everybody was moving in like really fast forward speed and I was moving in slow motion. I remember seeing that on movies. The protagonist would be deep into thought and he was so focused that the rest of the world was going on around him so fast. Just alone, everything void, everything a vacuum. So it was a very desperate feeling, a very sad feeling. I didn't realize there was bladder cancer, even though I should have. I was very surprised.
So, at what point in your mind did you turn things around? How long did it take? I know it probably took a
Yeah.
while for you to absorb all that.
Yeah.
So, w go through the steps of what happened there.
Well, when I was able to kind of come out of it, I would say that by the time I had a real handle on it and I knew what was going on, I had found myself in Columbus, Ohio, at a walk given by my flagship organization, Bladder Cancer Advocacy Network. They put on a walk every year in Columbus. That was the first real time that I'd stepped out on that precipice of the hole that I dug myself into physically and with my health. By then I got my blood sugar down. I was eating correctly. I was in the gym for about 6 months and I was actually surprised how quick that it was coming off. But each time I lost the ability that I had. Cancer had really taken a lot out of me. So it was really an uphill battle, just climb, climb, climb. My wife is doing it right next to me. She weighed 250 pounds. And today I think she said she weighed 139, so she didn't have to have cancer to do that, but she worked. And I noticed she would always be a little bit ahead of me. Like we'd be riding, we got to the point where we could ride 35 miles on our bikes on the bike trail. And she'd always be about 100 feet in front of me. And I'd say, see, Stephanie, I mean, I'm held back because of my past. I can't get there anymore. And then finally, when I found myself to where I finally was on my 2 feet and getting healthy again, was at that walk. That was the day that I realized that I was really going to survive and that I really had a chance. And in retrospect, felt back with the population, that lost void that I was in that first day. I have a picture of that day that I will send you. That it's the exact moment. I was 160. I had like some chronic problems that were causing me to lose weight in an unhealthy way, and I was out there ready to go. But it take a little bit of time, realization, and hard work.
Who is involved with your inner circle? Is it just your wife, other family, friends? Who was involved with that?
My wife is on my inner circle. We're a little bit different when it comes to the way that we go about our lives. I wouldn't say we're introverts, but we're very much and always have been a small unit. So some people say, "How do you go?" I'm currently in BCG immunotherapy for cancer. I'm in a 3-year course, and I'm through 2 year. I'm through year two. I'm no evidence of disease at this point. And my wife doesn't go with me, and it's about 15 minutes to my appointment, but it's a strength issue. I can get there, get it, come back. I get very ill, but I'm back in time for that. With this particular intravesical, they put the liquid into you, and then you got to hold it in your bladder, and then you got to coat your bladder. And the immune response to immunotherapy, is say a tumor killer of the bladder. And that immune reaction starts. And I'm doing pretty bad. Urination of blood, and I do it one treatment per week, so the whole month I'm extremely sick. But We pull up our bootstraps and we go. My wife's got to go to work. There's still life to lead here, and we find a lot of strength in that idea.
What does your wife do for work?
She works at home. She has since COVID. She is a financial specialist extraordinaire. She's had the same job forever. Luckily, one of my advocacy points is always the healthcare, and I feel very privileged, very fortunate to have great insurance. When I got bladder cancer, my wife upped our insurance, and now it's even better. So I avidly advocate for people who may not have insurance, as I know I can't imagine that. Those people need to be helped and helped in a very thorough way because it was hard enough for me to stay positive. I could not imagine being alone with no resources and no caregiver dealing with cancer. That should not happen.
Throughout this journey, uh, has your attitude changed for the better, or was it always like that, or talk about
Mm,
that?
no, no, it was not always like this. Like I said, with the alcoholism, I've found over time that, alcoholism is a symptom, albeit a terrible symptom, and it seems like a real problem, which it is, but it is a symptom of something else. So, using that coping mechanism to get through life for as long as I did, denotes that I was a completely different person without it. So if you would have known me before that, no, I wouldn't have been able to have this conversation because my morals and ideals were completely different. I thought that I had integrity, but when I faced death for as long as I did, to go a little deeper on the story, when they found the bladder cancer, they found two 5 millimeter lung nodules in my left lung, and I went to a pulmonologist and he didn't want to look in. He said, I got that. I'm pretty sure you don't have lung cancer. So, I got that a few times. I kept thinking, well, that's a real interesting thing to say. It's like, so what now? I think it's a lymph node. I don't want to go in for whatever reason. Do you mind waiting? Because I'm pretty sure you're good. So these questions, man. And I was like, yeah, because like I just said, we pull up our bootstraps and we do things a little, maybe unorthodox. And what's interesting is psychologically, I packed that away, and I I went to just distracting myself through music was one thing. Just got very deep into my music, and I started a band, and we played every Wednesday. And I think all people with illness kind of need that. So close to a year goes by, and then I get my chart message. You have a pulmonologist appointment in a week, CT scan, and I immediately started crying because I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna die. And I had completely forgotten about these two 5 millimeter nodules. I was going through, BCG, immunotherapy, and everything for the time. And then I went, and luckily they didn't grow. So when you talk about rebirth, Mark, that's the day. That's the day that I ended up at that bladder cancer walk. You know what I mean? And it's just like, talk about change. Yeah, I love my community. Before I had no sense of community, and my community is human beings now. The things that I know about human beings, I use to our success rather than their detriment. I use this conference that I went to. There were 160 advocates there. I, it changed my life, and as I was there, I realized that I wouldn't be here if I hadn't changed my life. So it becomes very cyclic. It's like, I'm grateful. Gratitude is the one lesson that I learned, the most important lesson that I learned about life at 50 years old after all this time. Gratitude, man. All you got to do is say the word. You don't even have to know the definition. And then you start to look around and you see how it might lack in the world and how you can infect the world with it. So I'm just gratitude. Gratitude for being here with you, Mark. Gratitude for my wife being in the other room. It's just I smile all the time. I just can't believe it sometimes, but I'm running with it, bro. I really am.
It's awesome. That's awesome. What do you think changed you more? Dealing with the alcoholism, the being overweight, the cancer. When did it all like come to a point where you just said, enough is enough?
Yeah, yeah. I love these questions. I love really complex questions. Death. Absolutely. I think all human beings, I would assume that all human beings think, about death. We grapple with it. You can see it written on everything that we do. Death is this ultimate conclusion. And, I was young and I'm a man, and it's like, hey, I got it. I'm comfortable with death. And then back in my mind, I'm going, I'm not really, but I'm comfortable with death. And then when I faced it, you know, um, sometimes it's still, you hit certain points and you remember where you were. And I remember being in a bed in the other room, and I knew that there was a devil and an angel in the room, and they both had something to say to me. And I didn't want to talk to them. And I spent a whole lot of time just reasoning and bargaining. And then I finally had a talk with them, and I realized that no, I don't want to die. Even though I'd sat on a couch and just drank myself to death. And I had a friend die at 49 last year. We started drinking together. I felt somewhat responsible for it. He died of alcoholism, man. He quit. His wife gave him an ultimatum like mine kind of gave me, even though mine wasn't so bad. She just said it's getting close to time. And he got, he died from the physical withdrawal, man. And in his death, now I'm alive and I got to pay that forward, man.
Yeah,
That's the pinnacle. That's the one. That's the point.
mhm. No, I totally understand. I mean, we tend to, when we have extreme health issues, at some point we are staring at our own mortality. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's
It's
something that is, when you're growing up, everybody knows that they're going to die. But to actually stare death in its face and deal with it head on, it takes a lot. It takes a lot, and it changes you as a
yeah.
human being.
Definitely. I'm happy for that. Cathartically, I'm extremely happy for that. That's that cross. I'm always like, why do I say this? I'd be on stage, saying that. Cancer is a great motivator. Cancer saved my life. Illness saved my life. But it's absolutely true. I'm living proof of the fact that you can look at it and have enough time. I weep for those who get cancer later. The average age of my cancer, bladder cancer, is around 73, and people that may not be lucky enough to be able to regain their health, and be able to go to the gym or, just not be have the willpower there, but not be able to physically do about it. But I always say. You can. You just got to put one foot in front of the other, man. You just got to walk. I got a 95-year-old neighbor that walks every day and he's still plugging along. So that's how we do it. We move forward.
That's what it takes, it's doing things that we know are right, even
Mhm.
though it doesn't feel like we can do it. And if you could break through and keep progressing and keep improving, even if it's just in very, very small amounts, you know, improvement is improvement. And
Mhm.
that's the most important thing is, when I was going through my major battle, I prior to getting cancer, I was in great shape. I was working out. My body was like a rock. I mean, I was just solid muscle. Then COVID hit and I wasn't able to go to the gym, which was huge. And all of a sudden, within, a relatively short period of time, my body started turning to jello, and I knew that things were going to be very difficult. And so to be able to change your mindset about who you are as you're growing as you're going through this journey is a critical thing as well,
Mhm.
because I had to start off at the very bottom when I started working out again. I was curling, 20 to 25 pounds an arm, no problem, because I did it for decades and
Yeah.
it was like, second nature. When I went back to working out, I had to start with 1 pound weights
Yeah,
because
man.
I was so weak.
That's a big
I mean,
realization.
mentally, I was like, how can this make sense?
Yeah.
Here I was for decades, doing 20 to 25 pounds, and now I have to humble myself to go back down to 1 pound weights. But I said, okay, this is what we're going to do, because this is the only way that I could rise and get better is this. I'm starting out the bottom. There was no place else to go further down. I was
Right.
at the very bottom,
Mhm.
and I started off in a week, I do, like 15 curls an arm and I progress. I try to push myself every day to do a little bit better and a little bit
Mhm.
better. And pretty soon, within a couple of weeks, I was up to 2 pounds. And, and it doesn't seem like much. Sometimes your growth in the moment doesn't seem like much at all, but you have to look at the whole picture and you have to give yourself the grace to be able to, get yourself back up off the floor and, get yourself back to where you want to be. And
Mhm.
the ultimate goal is, to get back to where you were. I mean, at this point in my life, I work out, I'm up to probably 15 pounds an arm. I don't believe that I want to go back to 20 to 25. It's just
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
not in the cards,
And it doesn't
It's
have to happen, I think,
right.
and I think when we get cancer, we get that drive. I know. I started running 5Ks every morning and cancer was
Uh-huh.
behind me. That's what I pictured. I'm like, there's a monster behind me, keeps that drive going. But I injured myself pretty good and I am 50 and you gotta grace and all those morals really coming, you gotta follow them. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Danny, I'd like to ask you a question. Would you be willing to come back and continue with the part two of this? Because there's a lot more we need to get into, and I know you've got so much more to share with people and discuss, and you've got a great story. So would you like to do that?
Absolutely. So you can have me back anytime you want. I love this message and we get it out there in as many parts as we can.
All right, that sounds great. Couple of things. With today's discussion, what is the most important thing that you would like to leave people with?
Here come them questions again. Once you do this for so long and you hear that and it just becomes you add something to it each time and my answer becomes so profound. And that's the real question, as an advocate. What do I leave people with? Gosh, I'm gonna say hope, because that's what I didn't have. When I was lost, when I first got diagnosed, and I went out they said, go make your next appointment for a cystoscopy, which is a scope and the only way they can see your bladder in a very easy way. And I said, oh, yeah, let's have a cystoscopy. What's that? So I went out in the office and I was waiting. It was a cubicle kind of area with seats, and you could kind of, hear things that were happening in the other room in the lobby. And this fellow came in and he had missed his appointment. And I heard quite a bit of information on it. And thought he had cancer. Same situation I was in. And it takes a while to get an appointment. There's another obstacle in our community with urology. Urologists are they're widespread, especially urologists that are urologist surgeons and cancer specific or oncology. And he started crying. And I was sitting there in my void of nowhere and I heard him cry. and talk about it's going to be a month before he could get his next appointment. And I said that I'm going to give this appointment to my this fellow of whom I don't know. And the only thing that stopped me was that my wife, she would not have approved that time. That one time, Dan, you have to be self-centered. You know what I mean? This guy's got his journey and that guy's got yours. You've got yours. It's unfortunate. It is very unfortunate. But this man, now that I'm 2 years in, and you'll know, Mark, you know, with time, he's got his own journey. If I take that from him with illness, he's probably not going to make it. So luckily, because I'm kind of spontaneous like that. So when I think of that, and I'm glad that I didn't do it for many different reasons. I hope I could have. After that, I said, well, now I got to pay it forward. So I try to give people. That's what I try to, exactly what your question was, to make them walk away with some hope, to know that A, there's somebody there who's going to help you, somebody like me who's going to direct you towards help. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not. I'm the greatest mentor ever. We're going to do this. We're going to get this done. And just don't lose hope. You can go here. You can go see Mark. You can go to Mark's channel and you can watch a couple videos and maybe that's all you need, but just do it.
Awesome. Final question for you. If you had a superpower and you could do whatever you needed to do, how would you, Danny Gereg, help make the world a better place?
Mark, I love your question, sir. Ironically enough, I was just asked this question at my last conference. It's crazy because it doesn't, that's why I was, my reaction might have said, oh, I get asked this all the time, and I don't. And I love it. I love the question. They took a Polaroid picture of us and they said, write your superpower on here. And my father died of colorectal cancer in 2020, and it was very, very profound. You know, when you lose your father, it's pretty profound, I guess, for everybody. And he taught me a lesson. Never let anyone challenge your integrity. And I thought about it, and because I heard a lot of answers coming out of the people in the room, like they were all great, but I thought of that integrity, and I said, yeah, man, because when Dad was just a little bit off, people are allowed to challenge your integrity. You can let them. It's how you react to that situation. Wow, Mark, thank you for asking that.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you, Danny. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you out there who are joining us here at To Be Your Own Hero. Please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section, and be sure to join us for next week's part two with Danny Gereg. And we're going to get into some very different stuff because he's got an incredible journey. And I hope that each and every one of you uh, comes to a realization at some point how precious this life that we have is. It is absolutely precious. It's a gift. And that's why it's so important. We only go around once. Let's make the most, very most, out of each and every single day, each and every hour, each and every minute, each and every second. And we will see you next week on To Be Your Own Hero. Thank you very much.